Hello, mates. I'm Edward Rogers, and I'm here hanging out with Rob from Front Row Live. You do it too.
TV Generation, seventh album.
Seventh album, a new album.
New album. I've been listening to it on the drive here. I've listened to it throughout the week.
And what's your vibe on it?
I'm loving it. 20th Century Heroes.
Yeah.
I can't believe it took this long for someone to actually write a song about these heroes.
You know, it's so simple because unless you're 17 or older, we're all going to die being 20th century something.
Right.
So, but you know, in the last couple of years, there's been so many younger heroes of ours or older ones. Let's take David Bowie for an example, or Prince, just as two of them. They, you know, it's unbelievable that our generation is dying, but they're still young, they're still relevant in their lives, but you're going to realize that as we all go on, almost anyone over the age of 17 is part of that 20th century generation, guys. So look out. But, you know, yeah, it's you know, when I was a kid, rock stars, my idols, didn't die. They were forever famous. So for me to find out that, you know, waking up, especially on this Monday morning, it was like January 10th, I think, 2015, and hearing the news that you know, someone as meaningful in my life as David Bowie had passed away, it was like not acceptable, you know, and it was just such a shock. So you know, I just thought, I wasn't trying to come up with any gimmick or anything. I was just trying to come up with a legitimate how I feel about so many heroes and just everyday people in our lives, our mothers, our fathers, our parents, our, you know, like just all of our figures in life are getting older, and that's the name of that. That's where the inspiration for the song came from.
No, I love that, and I love the fact that you put heroes and not idols, because I've always said, you know, these, especially musicians, you grow up listening to these artists. We just had this conversation before the camera. They inspire you so much. One song can hit you, you know, in so many ways.
Stay with you the rest of your life.
But these artists, I've never seen them as idols. I've always seen them as the heroes of my generation, for example. Yes. So I loved how you actually put that in the title.
You know what? I am first, and I've always been a fan of music, and I love it. And there are certain role models for me, and I'm sure like yourself, that I've always followed and felt these people lead and define what I'm trying to do, and they live the life. And some of them are legit, some of them end up not being as legit as others, but that's all part of a life we all go through in a cycle, you know. And but yet there are people that I admire, and I've tried to base my life and what I do on some of the way that they conduct their lives.
Right. Now with this album, this is the 7th album. As you come into the studio to record that 7th album, does the process become easier? Does it become harder? Do you still see some challenges that you continue to face while you go into the studio? My
producer, who's not here, Don Piper, we sit down, and for the last album we had 60 songs, and we narrowed it down to 20 songs. And the idea was, how do we do this different? How do we approach this album different? The idea that we came with was to find the musicians that we use. And we use a pretty tight group of musicians who all have real extensive background and understand what my influences are. And the idea was that we were going to give them the demos of the songs, but no rehearsal. So we brought them in, set everyone up, did 2 or 3 takes of every song, went back. If there were any errors, we would correct them. But the idea was it was fresh. It was playing from the soul versus playing from the rehearsed parts. And the other change that I made was that I decided I didn't want to be part of that game. I wanted to work a little harder on getting my vocal sounds after I had the rhythm tracks down. So what I laid out for all of those, or what, you know, the producer laid out for all those people, didn't apply to me. So it's kind of reversing the role, because I've cut records where I go in with the band and we cut everything live, you know, and then we edit down, and hopefully there's a good vocal. This time I wanted the vocals to be cut separately and really spend a little bit of time in refinement of both lyrical and phrasing and content, you know. And, you know, when you make a record, everyone, you know, every record to me has been approached a different way, different excitement, a different process, and try to get something different out of the experience, you know. And also working with different musicians, but keeping the core band, but always bringing in someone new that can change the direction or add a different ingredient.
Right.
So if you say after 7 albums, where do you go? It's to the 8th album where I might just totally bring in a band that are jazz, fusion oriented, and see how they work against my songs. Could be something simple as that.
Yeah.
Always look for something that's new and challenging.
And as you were saying, you were perfecting your vocals this time around for the recording process, but the same could be said with the writing process. How do you get better at writing?
You know how you get better? It's like, unfortunately, it's for me anyway. It's how do you get to Carnegie Hall? You practice.
Right.
And I take 2 days a week minimum that I just work on writing as a skill. And the hardest songs for me to write personally are love songs, actually. But I am an observational writer, which means I look at what goes around us, and I try to reflect that in the lyrics that I write. And it's not preachy, but it's just the way that I see the world. Yeah. So if I'm looking at a particular situation, there's a song on the album called On This Ordinary Wednesday in June. Okay. And it was written in 7 minutes, the basic outline. And I was watching television, and there was this gentleman by the name of Dylan Roof, who I believe was from South Carolina, went into a church on an ordinary quiet Wednesday, I think in August in June, and was sitting there really quiet, and then just walked up to 9 black people and shot them dead. Wow. And he was convicted of murder, mass murders, and I believe now he's waiting or he's up for whether they're going to execute the man or not. Right. But the passion in that, and there was 2 messages I was trying to get across, is how fundamentally how people think these days or don't think how valuable human life is. And the second is just how gun control laws are so lax that a person in that condition can go in there. And the third part is just the moral thing of not having any value to people's lives. Now, I'm not a preacher, believe me, I'm not. But that song came about just purely from me thinking of these topics, and I was able to write the lyrics for it and lay it down. Right. Now, I'm not passing judgment. I am just sharing an observation of how modern life is not as valuable as I think it should be anyway. Right. Did I get you upset? You've calmed down.
Oh, no. We're getting deep here. We're getting deep.
Were you ready for this?
I'm ready for this.
All right. So, I mean, there were other songs that I turned around and I want to have a playful mood to them, So
she's the one being one of them.
She's the one who's just like, let's just toss this one out and have a real edgy point to it. And it's just about women being more aggressive, TV generation. I know you being a little younger than me, maybe a couple of years, but I remember when my parents were until they had me, basically, they never had television. Right. Well, you grew up in an area where television was probably in every room, I would imagine. I grew up in an era where I got to see the first color television and that was eye-opening to me. And it was kind of like, and I'll tell you exactly what I was doing. I was watching the Ed Sullivan Show. And an old show, folks, an old show.
It went from black to color.
It just transformed. No, but we had a black and white television. And we had 2 or 3, so we were doing all right. But we went to our neighbor's house, and they had a color TV. And I remember watching the Ed Sullivan Show, and what totally blew my mind was seeing the Rolling Stones doing "Let's Spend Some Time Together." They couldn't use "Let's Spend the Night Together." It was too controversial at the time. But it just opened my mind to, wow, where is the world going? Yeah. Now, if you don't have a cell phone, if you don't have your portable, God forbid we don't have our cell phones, we're lost. Yeah. There used to be a time, I remember being, I'm a little older than you, a lot older, and we didn't have cell phones. It was like you actually got on the phone and you call someone. Yeah. Now we've got the remote situation. We can order food. We can order everything on the computer. We don't have to leave our rooms, basically, which is, and the sad part about it is we don't have this human contact.
It's kind of unfortunate.
Now. Yeah, there is the lack of human contact. So I don't want to be over philosophical about this record, but there were views that I took, and I stand by, and I just thought, A million people can write a song. I'm just writing it from a different angle and what I see and feel in the world.
Right. And you actually touched on a really great point with the Rolling Stones song "They Couldn't Say Night."
Now you can't say everything.
Yes, and now it's like there's pretty much you can say anything.
Are we a censored network?
You can say whatever you want here.
So now we can say fuck and get away with it, and there is no element.
And we'll still be on the air.
And we won't edit that word out, you know.
But does that come to mind when you're creating your music? Do you think about maybe I should censor this? Maybe I shouldn't use that word. Maybe I should use that word.
Censor something. I will always edit something, and when you're writing and you're freelancing a thought or an idea, the worst thing you want to do is put any kind of capture or any type of I can't go there because that's a dangerous subject. Yeah. Later on, you may think it's not the suitable material, or you may decide to go with it, but you can't stop the process. I mean, what's most important to me in the writing element of songs is that you have the freedom to create. If that thought comes, you've got to catch that thought, because it's only there for 10 seconds. Right. If whoever above gives us that idea or that moment of inspiration, you may get 2 lines and you may go back and it may take you 6 months to get those next 2 lines. Yeah. But you've got to absorb those seconds and then finish that piece of work. Am I talking out of the clouds?
No. I completely understand. As you're saying that, how a song could take you so long. Is there a specific song that has taken you a long time, or maybe you still have that song somewhere out there hoping that it can be finished?
I try not to go back on old songs, but every once in a while I do. But on this new album, I did this song that just couldn't get the lyrics the way I wanted them, and it ended up sounding like a love song. And it actually isn't about a love song. I'm not going to tell you what it was about, because then I give it away. Right. But it took forever to make disguise this song so that it would sound like, oh, we're so happy, walking down the streets of Baltimore. Has nothing to do with Baltimore. Has a much more darker overture. But only I know that. Right. But somebody who's listening goes, oh, what a pretty song about falling in love and walking down the streets in Baltimore. Well, only I know that the actual depression that's going around it, you know. So I kind of enjoy that sometimes, just kind of pulling the wool down over people's eyes. But if people are happy with the song, then here's the worst thing. Not the worst thing, this is the best thing actually, is that on the charts of what's doing well, and the record company said, oh, this song's really doing well, and you've got to work on this one. Right. And I'm sitting there going, if you really knew what it was about, you wouldn't be so happy about it. So it's having your own little jokes sometimes that makes me happy as well.
What made you want to disguise songs the first time you did it? I
had a dark experience in my life, and I really didn't want to share it. Okay. And
is it the fact that you're not ready to be vulnerable, or you just didn't want to let it out?
Ready to be vulnerable. I just felt in this song I wanted to see if I could disguise one emotion with another. Okay. And there was nothing behind it. It's not me being, oh yeah, I'm putting one across. Right. It was really more like I didn't want to share the experience the way that I knew about it, and I tried to put a different spin on it, and it was kind of satisfactory to me to make it the people that are listening to and react go, oh, what a lovely up-tempo pretty song this is. And were you ever in Baltimore? To be honest, I've never been there. But anyway,
the fact that you mentioned that, it's kind of cool, because it's kind of also what we talked about off camera, how a song could mean something to me, but it could mean something completely different to you or any other listener.
I may disagree with the lyrics. Or I might just not like the rhythm or whatever the content is. But it's the human heart that makes the decision for you. Definitely. Along with the brain connecting right.
Definitely. Now, over the years, the way that music gets produced has changed a lot. Everything's all electronic now. I like the fact that you said you played it as almost as if it was live. Not a lot of artists will do that today. But have you really used these digital ways of producing new music? And if so, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the things when I first started out, I didn't know that you could auto-tune vocals, and I thought that was the way you could do it. And obviously that's a major tool used in a lot of artists that record. Right. Do not want any auto-tuning. I want my voice to do the work. Right. you know. And if I can't do it, I will either find a way to do it or rearrange a part. So in that sense, I find the natural voice and the tone and the phrasing and the limited ability that I have to sing works for me personally, and it makes the lyrics, and I hope it makes the sound more believable in what I'm trying to.
It's definitely more meaningful.
You know, on the other side of it, you know, you're playing with a band that's never heard the song, run through it 3 times, and there's one bummer note. Well, I don't mind if you go in and you fix the one bummer note. You know, come on now. You know, those are the beauties. Because again, recording an album is so expensive if you go to a studio, and you know, unless you're one of the 1/1,000,000% of those artists that have unlimited budgets, you have to be creative in working. And when a small label that I'm on, which is Zip, who are really a great label for me to work with, they give me total artistic freedom to do whatever I want. I need to be conscious of the budget. So if I go in and we record for 3 days in a studio, I want to get the best out of that. So whatever chances I'm taking, if we've got a choice between recutting the whole rhythm track or fixing a bass line or letting the bass player go in and fix a couple of notes, that's what the wonder is of studios today. Pro Tools is an amazing tool. And I think the good and the bad thing about music and recording these days is that anybody and everybody can do it. That's the great thing. So someone like myself who, you know, is not really a versatile musician, I can go in and create within Pro Tools or Logic. I can put together songs that I can present to people as finished demos. You couldn't do that years ago. You either had to be on one side or the other. So that's the great thing about, you know, today's process and how easy it is to record. But I think we lose 2 elements. I think we lose a little bit of the human touch in it, and I think the analog recording has a human warmth to it, which we lose. And I also think that we have such easy access to so much music these days that sometimes it's not valued as much as it used to be. Maybe I'm going to be wrong here, but there may be certain songs that you, or certain artists or certain albums that you think are amazing and you hold them as high. I just think that people's values to records, it's so easy and disposable these days that they don't hold it maybe as important as I did in my generations.
I could agree with that.
Yeah,
I can definitely agree with that.
I mean, is there one artist that stands out to you that is like maybe a pivotal artist that's?
Well, I mean, to me, like one artist that I've always seen that won't change no matter how easy your life gets as far as creating music is Dave Grohl, Foo Fighters.
There you go.
He's always been true to his music. And you know, he knows. He prefers.
He's from the old school, though.
He is. But it's hard for these new artists to say that there's new artists that do that.
And you know what? He's got integrity. I would think that these are older artists, but like someone like Tom Petty has always approached music as an integrity artist. And there seems, you know, in this new league of musicians, and I'll probably get killed for this statement, but I don't see anybody coming up that's the new David Grohl.
Right, I agree with that too.
It's you know, there's a gentleman who was a drummer who redeveloped him and found himself and put together a band and totally committed himself to it and feels passionate about it. So you know, you've presented a perfect example of somebody in today's society that matters, that is still making music. To me, in my world and in my time, Bowie was obviously a person who approached everything as integrity and truly believed in the art of music and an art form. And so there were people out there. There are people out there, but I don't see those new artists coming along. You know, it's funny because the potential of, like Prince, I was put on a very high pedestal because I knew how hard he pushed himself. And there's artists that it's not part of my generation, but Mars Bruno, I think, pushes himself really hard. I would think that, believe it or not, Taylor Swift might do the Carole King Tapestry album. I think she has the ability. I think right now she's in a mass consumption market, but hopefully, you know, these people grow up at some point and make music that matters, that from the soul versus the pocketbook.
But even then, I honestly I do not mind still being able to watch the greats, you know, hit the stage and perform. Last night I was just watching Lionel Richie's concert, and it just blew my mind. The stage was empty. It was just him and his musicians, and it was probably one of the best shows I've seen. Wow. As opposed to, you know, you go to today's concerts and there's so much lights and there's so much pyrotechnics and everything that takes you away from the artist. But Lionel was just him and his band.
You know what? I think, you know, there's great arena bands, and we all should take advantage of those arena bands. But to me personally, there's something of being in a smaller club when you see an intimate artist perform. Right. That's something special. And especially, you know, when you do a broken down segment of 2 or 3 musicians who are really talented with a singer-songwriter that can put the message across, that's a special evening, because you come out, and especially if it's a small theater, because you get to, again, understand that work of that artist, right. and you are part of that evening. Right. You know, when you're in a big stadium at times, yeah, it's great to see artists in great big stadiums, right. You know, and there's, like you said, there's the dancing girls, and there's the, you know, the fireworks, the fireworks, and there's all that great stuff going on. But and it is a spectacular event. You walk out feeling great. You've just been entertained. Yes. Difference between being entertained and feeling the emotion of music being passed across.
I like that.
That's a good one.
That was a really, you should definitely copyright that.
It's all being recorded by you.
That's gonna be, there you go. That's gonna be on a lyric for the next album number 8.
Number 8's already done. Moving for number 9.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. You're quick with your music.
You know what? Yeah, I've got 40 songs ready for the next record, and my idea is to end up with 60 and then really chop away. Yeah. You know, unfortunately, you set goals for yourself, and I try to set each project one step above. You know, so that's what you should. You don't have to do anything, but that's how I feel about how you should treat music. I am a fan first. I am a fan who's seen a lot of musicians and both good and bad. And I'm just fortunate now to be having a little bit of the enjoyment of doing my own work, right? Which is so precious to me. Right.
And with that, with the album being out already, can we expect some tours from you?
You know what? The manager over there is busy right now trying to book tours. I think the idea right now is we've already done a tour of England. It's to go back and redo that. We're thinking of coming back here in the new year and doing much more work here. This is the first step of putting our toe in the water and seeing how you guys like us.
Like I said, the record, I've been listening to it this week. I really enjoy it. TV Generation, you guys, it's out now. You guys should definitely pick it up. And to close us off, what does music mean to you?
It's everything in my life. It's you know, one of the most important way I spend every day. And I'm lucky now to be able to be more involved in it, you know, and given a little bit more creative freedom and getting a little bit, just that you get some people responding now and listening to what you're saying and the messages you give. There's nothing greater in the world. And, you know, there's the ups and downs. You know, you come back after doing something good, and then you wait for the next thing, and maybe it doesn't happen for a couple of months, and you're like, oh, nobody cares anymore, and you pull your hair out, and then something else just pops out of the woodwork, you know. And, you know, so music is it for me, you know, and it always has been. You know, from when I was like, you know, 12 years old, it just hit me and resonates to this day. And you'd think I'd grow old at some point, I'd get tired of it, or there's always somebody new coming along that excites me, and I am totally open to new artists as well. I have a radio show in New York called Atlantic Tunnel, and it's on a radio station there called Little Water Radio, and we do 2 hours of Brit music, myself and a mate, when we're in New York together. And there's nothing better than playing old and then new, and you know, finding those new artists. And now we've got to a point where people send us material, and the record companies send us, but it's so much better getting a file or something from a fan who says, I make music, and this person ends up being something really good, you know, and then we're able to support them. So, you know, the process goes on.
Well, I'm going to be that fan to request someone for you, because I just started listening to a band from the UK, amazing Brit rock. They're called the Excerpts. I don't know if you've heard of them yet. No, but send me a link. Amazing. Seriously, it's been on repeat.
Wow.
So,
what do they sound like?
I can't even like.
That's a good answer.
They sound like nobody. Like, but
we'll
that's
hook up.
yeah. I'll definitely.
If you're enthusiastic about it, it's got to be something I want to hear
yeah.
about. And we'll hook up. We'll give it a listen. And either way, I'll tell you what. I'll make a deal with you. You pick out the best track that you think's right. We'll give it a play next week on Atlantic Tunnel.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be crazy. Now I wish I was in the band.
Maybe you are. If your picture's in the band, then the whole deal's squashed. Okay, just self promotion, you know.